Manitobans stuck in Mexico are voicing their frustrations over the lack of communication and support from airlines. And as they wait for a return flight, costs are adding up as some are having to pay out of pocket for food and accommodations. So what are your rights in situations like this? Gabor Lukacs, the president of the Air Passengers' Rights, joins me now to set the record straight. Gabor, good to speak with you.
It's good to be with you.
I guess give us an idea of what the legal obligations airlines have to travelers stranded in Mexico right now.
The primary obligation in such a situation is to transport a passenger back to Canada on the next available flight. If the airline cannot find a seat on its own or partner's flight's next available flight that departs within 48 hours of the original departure time, the airline has to buy at its own dime a seat to the passenger on competitor airline's next available flight. And if that flight costs $5,000, let it be. The obligation is spelled out in black and white in the Air Passenger Protection Regulations and in the Canada Gazette, which explains that this includes competitor.
You know, that's interesting you bring that up, because we have heard from some travelers who have told us their wait to get home has been so long, they've went ahead and bought their own return plane ticket, but at a very inflated price. So under the rights of passengers, do these airlines have to reimburse them for those costs?
Definitely yes. The airlines may try to make up some kind of excuses for refusing to do so, but if I were caught in such a situation, I would send a demand to the airline that they pay those extra expenses incurred within 30 days. I would also seek meals and accommodation and lost wages under Article 19 of the Montreal Convention, because clearly the airline has failed to take all reasonable measures to mitigate the delay of passengers, and that triggers liability. So an airline cannot just sit on its hands and say, well, our next flight that we can put you on is in mid-March or early March when it is late February, and there are flights of other airlines. If an airline does it, it triggers very significant liability under the Montreal Convention, way beyond what is actually in the APPR. So passengers in such situations should seek not only reimbursement of their out-of-pocket expenses for getting back to Canada, but also meals, accommodation, lost wages. And after 30 days of the airline having received your demand, on day 31, file small claims court papers. That is how you're going to get the airline to take you seriously.
Is there any sort of loophole, you know, given the circumstances of how this situation unfolded in Mexico, that allows airlines any leeway here? Because, you know, we're not seeing a lot of these things happen.
There is absolutely no loophole in this specific area insofar as the law is concerned. The problem is that the federal government is assisting the airlines to sabotage the law and not enforcing the law in any way. In a normal country, airlines should be facing millions of dollars in fines after what they have done. That's what would have happened under the Biden administration in the United States when airlines were doing various misbehavior when it comes to passengers' rights. Unfortunately, in Canada of 2026, airlines feel, and rightly feel, that the law doesn't apply to them, that they are above the law, and that must change.
Could we see a class action lawsuit at the end of all this?
I would hope so. Certainly, WestJet has been facing some class action lawsuits in the past for its past misconducts. It is also facing a lawsuit for misrepresentation, deception of passengers in British Columbia, where already an interlocutory injunction has been issued last year against WestJet. So I hope that there will be more legal action taken against the airlines, but this is a matter that the federal government should have been dealing with. It's unfortunate that the courts have to be burdened with such matters. It's inevitable because the federal government is not actually upholding the law, but this is a governmental failure. It's a government failure, not simply an airline failure.
Well, Gabor, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention tonight. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you very much for having me.